As the war in Iran seems to have become a hot war again today, with U.S. and Iranian ships firing at each other in the Strait of Hormuz, President Trump has decided at the same time that he's going to pull 5,000 U.S. troops out of Germany. Now, wait.
Pete Hegseth is so stupid. How stupid is he? He is so stupid that even Donald Trump can see that his Secretary of Defense is a fool. Because Pete Hegseth just made a mess that Donald Trump has to clean up. We are going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, Donald Trump doesn't even like to clean up his own messes. This is a man who has never taken accountability or apologized for anything in his life. So you better believe that having to fix Pete's screw up had him furious, which is why Donald Trump got on the phone and chewed him out. This could be the end for Pete Hegseth's career. Although that should have happened a long time ago, because he continues to cause problems in Donald Trump's very problematic, illegal, unnecessary and immoral war on Iran. We are going to get into Hegseth's latest mistake and why Trump called him out on the phone and ripped into him. But it all begins with how Pete is moving our troops and which bases he is removing them from. That is the scandal that broke out. That is why Trump is attacking him. That is why we need this context from Rachel Maddow before we get into that call.
As the war in Iran seems to have become a hot war again today, with U.S. and Iranian ships firing at each other in the Strait of Hormuz, President Trump has decided at the same time that he's going to pull 5,000 U.S. troops out of Germany. Now, wait, why does that matter for the Iran war? Germany isn't Iran. Well, when Trump started the war in Iran, without hardening or protecting any of our gazillion military bases and installations all over the Middle East, which were now in the range of fire for Iranian missiles and drones, oops. Where do you think they sent the U.S. troops who had to be evacuated really quickly off of all of those undefended bases all over the Middle East? Where'd they send them? They sent them to Germany. Because we have a really big troop presence in Germany and lots of facilities for our troops in Germany. There have been hundreds of U.S. troops wounded in Trump's Iran war so far. Where do U.S. troops get evacuated to when they're wounded in the Middle East? They get evacuated to Germany because we have such a big troop presence there and lots of military facilities there to handle those things. Trump is now sending 5,000 American troops home from that crucial position. Trump is simultaneously re-upping the war in the Middle East and also shrinking our ability to support that war from the place where we support a war like that, which is Germany. Why did he decide to do this now? Simultaneously upping the Iran war and also taking away the military's ability to support the troops that are there fighting the war. Why did he decide to do this now? Where did he get this idea? Well, little clue in the fact that he's done this exact same thing before. In his first term in 2020, you might remember this, it went down kind of exactly the same way. In 2020, Trump announced that he was going to take thousands of U.S. troops out of Germany. And the Pentagon was totally blindsided. Nobody could figure out why he announced it. Turns out he had just talked to Vladimir Putin right before making that announcement about pulling U.S. troops out of Germany. Of course, Putin, more than anything, wants U.S. troops out of all of Europe. So he was delighted. Then that was in June 2020. Then the following month, July 2020, Trump talked to Putin again. And right after talking to Putin again, Trump reiterated more forcefully this time, I really mean it. I want those thousands of U.S. troops taken out of Germany. The only reason it ultimately didn't happen back then is because that was already late in the year in 2020, and then Trump lost the presidential election, and President Joe Biden countermanded Trump's ridiculous, nonsensical order. But now Trump's back in the White House, and so here we are again, and it's gone down exactly the same way. The president publicly announced that he wants thousands of U.S. troops pulled out of Germany. The Pentagon, once again, totally blindsided. Nobody knows why he has done this. Then it turns out, it emerges that he made this announcement about pulling U.S. troops out of Germany right after he got off the phone with Vladimir Putin.
Now, we have talked about this reporting from Rachel Maddow before, and we've talked about it because it is incredibly important and impactful in understanding why the House is currently furious with Pete Hegseth potentially not being able to hit the quotas for troops that we have on bases in Europe, especially in a time of conflict. You saw many members of the Senate and House Armed Services Committee come out against this move from Pete Hegseth. But it is also causing problems for Donald Trump because of how furious the House is. But also let's point out the fact, as we've talked about previously in this reporting, this is great for Putin, this is great for Iran, this is great for Netanyahu. This is complete destabilization, what they thrive off of. And although Donald Trump does to an extent as well when he's playing the markets, and so does Pete Hegseth, actually we're going to talk about that later, it's not what he wants right now, especially when he has to rectify it. Which is why he called and chewed out Pete Hegseth before he had to fix his mistake. Trump tears into Hegseth for targeting wrong country. Pete Hegseth apparently created a huge mess for Donald Trump in his rush to keep the 79-year-old president happy. Insiders have revealed that the defense secretary's abrupt maneuver to cancel the deployment of US troops to Poland triggered an angry phone call from Trump, who was forced to explain that Poland was not one of the European allies that had earned his wrath. Hegseth blindsided officials on both sides of the Atlantic last week when he cancelled the deployment of 4,000 troops to Poland at the 11th hour. The decision stirred confusion within the Pentagon and quickly sparked a firestorm of criticism from American lawmakers and European allies. The president, dumb as he is, was stumped by the move, a current and former US official told the Wall Street Journal. Trump phoned Hegseth to demand an explanation for his decision to cancel the troop deployment, according to the outlet. During the conversation, Trump also told Hegseth that the US shouldn't treat Poland poorly given its close ties to the White House. An armored brigade from Fort Hood, Texas, was supposed to go on a 9-month rotation to Poland, but Hegseth cancelled that deployment in an effort to reduce the number of US troops in Europe after Trump whined about European allies' lack of support for his Iran war. According to CNN, Hegseth's decision was a head-scratcher for some officials because it was Germany, not Poland, that had criticized Trump's war. The Journal reports last month the German Chancellor drew Trump's ire when he said, "The Iranians are clearly stronger than expected, and the Americans clearly have no truly convincing strategy in negotiations either. Ain't that right?" Adding that a whole nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership. This is a slap in the face to Poland, referring to Pete Hegseth's move. It's a slap in the face to our Baltic friends. Nebraska Republican Don Bacon scolded army leaders in a budget hearing this week. Trump had to respond to Hegseth's mess, writing, "Based on the successful election of the now president of Poland, who I was proud to endorse our relationship with him, I am pleased to announce that the United States will be sending an additional 5,000 troops to Poland. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Trump changed course on the deployment of troops to Poland in a bizarre Truth Social post on Thursday night that invoked the election win of the Polish president, which occurred almost a year ago. So, this doesn't really make any sense. He's just trying to run some cover for Pete, so it's not so obvious what a screw-up this was. This was just a screw-up from Pete Hegseth, who we know is an idiot, but it invokes something that I have been talking about a lot lately. Clearly, Donald Trump does not know what's happening with his war on Iran. And so other people, in an effort to make Donald Trump happy, stay in his good graces, and in Pete Hegseth's case not get fired, have been guessing what Donald Trump wants from them. Or they've been taking things into their own hands, essentially using the power of the presidency themselves as unelected officials in our government, doing whatever they want, using the most powerful office in the world to enrich themselves or make the wrong decisions. And we know that Pete has a history of enriching himself, or at least certainly trying to enrich himself, that I actually want to talk about in a second. But Donald Trump is in such cognitive decline that Pete Hegseth is guessing what the president wants because he can't articulate it himself. That is a very dangerous place that we are in. If Pete Hegseth is making these decisions. Now that is not to say that I think we're in a super safe and comfortable place if Donald Trump is making the calls. No, of course not. But the fact that he does not know what is going on and Pete is just guessing should leave us all very worried. And this is again just another representation of how poorly planned, if at all, the orchestration of this war was. They think that it is television. That is how Pete Hegseth treats his job. That he's supposed to be a fanatical MAGA pastor going in and talking about Pulp Fiction and Jules and tasty burgers and a Royale with cheese. And it's like, brother, you are not a pastor. You are not on Fox anymore. This isn't the backup weekend show. You are the Secretary of Defense. But that's not how they think about it. They think it's a gimmick. They think it's a game. They think that they can do whatever they want and there are no implications. But there are serious implications. These people change lives, take lives and move markets based on their decisions. And speaking of moving markets, I wanted to talk about Pete and his insider trading. Elizabeth Warren grilled him on it.
I'm also concerned about recent reporting on your own financial dealings with regard to profiting from the war in Iran. The Financial Times reported that your broker tried to buy hundreds of shares in a BlackRock fund invested in defense companies just before the war began. The law clearly prohibits the Secretary of
That entire story is false, has been from the beginning, and was made up out of whole cloth. And anybody that looks at it sees how it was worded from the beginning to make it look like I was involved in something I had nothing to do and never have. So any insinuation that I've ever profited, other than serving this nation, what what I give, what you give, what others give. I'm not looking for money. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for profit. I don't do it for stocks. And that's part of the reason why I'm able to be effective in this job. Because no one owns me. No one owns this department. No one owns this president. And we can execute for the American people, and we do.
The law clearly prohibits the Secretary of Defense from owning stock in the 10 biggest defense contractors. Other senators and I sent you a letter with detailed questions about this, and you have not given us a response. So I'd like to hear you say, did you, through your broker at Morgan Stanley or otherwise, seek to invest in any defense-related funds right before Trump started the Iran war?
I'll give it to you as a big, fat negative.
Then let me ask you a second question. Is your broker getting your personal sign-off on any investment in individual stocks?
Bigger, fatter, negative.
He's not getting your sign-off before he makes investments in defense stocks? Can I refer you to your
I'm not making investments, Senator.
I am asking, does he know that he has to get your sign-off before he does that?
Of course. I don't know what you're looking for, but you ain't going to find it.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
I would like to enter into the record the ethics agreement that the Secretary of Defense has signed, that he will sign off personally before his broker makes any attempt to buy defense stocks.
Is there objection?
Thank you.
Without objection, it will be admitted.
Pete Hegseth is a moron who is trying to increase his wealth and I guess get more attention at his wacko right-wing church. Like Pete Hegseth is not a competent or serious person. To invoke the words of the great Logan Roy, he is not a serious person. And even Donald Trump can see that. If Donald Trump is calling Pete Hegseth to ring him out, you know we have reached a pretty bad point. This is a major screw up from Pete. He continues to mess up and cause problems for Donald Trump. I don't know if this might be the last straw. It certainly could be. We are going to cover it on this show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you.